Okay guys, we are into lecture 2 of module 7. We're going to go over what was going on with Texas and the southwest portion of the United States, and then get into a little bit of the election of 1844 if we can get that far in today's lecture. But a lot of the stuff we're talking about is actually answering questions that you guys had from your first module submissions, that many of you turned in those questions, and I've graded everyone that's turned one in so far and sent them back. So now it is on to the second module, which you received this morning, to get working on. It's due by Monday, but the sooner you get it in, the better. But if you ever have any questions or concerns, please, message me. Google Hangouts, again, is a great way to communicate. Just tell me you're having trouble with a certain question, and I will, help you, point you in the right direction. Questions with books, if some of you are still having issues, please make sure to reach out to me. I've been working through step-by-step processes with a lot of you just to get you to access the book. And by next week it'll be easy to access the book online. These first few days it's hard. You got to remember the process and go through it. But I know many of you are doing just fine. So let's start with Texas and the southwest part of the United States. First thing you need to understand is Mexico is getting their independence from Spain. So you've got the country of Mexico here, and then up here is actually portions of the United States. So you got California, Colorado, New Mexico, all these areas, which were controlled by Mexico at the time, and eventually become a part of the United States, right? So in the 1820s, the government of Mexico wants people from America to settle in their land. They want to trade with us. They want to make some money, right? That's what it's all about. And they are encouraging people to come into their territory. Remember we talked about a fresh start going into Oregon on the Oregon Trail. This was another opportunity for a fresh start for tons of people, all right? You've got something called the Santa Fe Trail, which is basically starts in Santa Fe, New Mexico, goes all the way up to Independence, Missouri, and this is just a trail of, money and goods. You wanted to move your goods up and down this trail, tons of opportunities to sell your goods, to purchase other goods, to trade for other goods, and it was a way to make money. It was a great opportunity for both the young United States and Mexico, which was trying to grow as well. They are also looking for us to come in and settle there. So you've got land being settled for 10 cents an acre, which, think about it, an acre, you could fit several homes today on an acre of land, and they are selling it for a dime, right? Now, clearly money back then is a little different in terms of its value compared to today, but in today's world, for example, an acre would cost about $50,000, okay? Here you have a man by the name of Stephen Austin, who was one of your questions. He is known as the father of Texas. He is going to lead thousands of people into the area known as Texas to settle there, okay? They are not going to receive the protection of the United States government at this time, but again, the fresh start, the willingness to work with the Mexican government for the most part, and he's gonna get them in there, all right? So why are people moving there? We talked about it. Mexico needs money. There's not a lot of Mexican people coming up into Texas, so we're gonna start to push in, and then we want the US actually to be a buffer zone, okay? When I say we, I'm talking about Mexico. Mexico wanted someone between them and the Native Americans. So we were okay with it. We were okay with kind of moving into that position of Texas right there, and everyone seemed to be okay. This will push you on to page 3 of the notes if you're following along, okay? Americans are pouring in, like I said, fresh start, cheap land, opportunities to make money, and they're coming in. And we've got, one of the biggest things is cotton, right? We've got cotton that is all over the place in Texas that they're going to start to produce, and cattle, okay? A huge producer of cattle in Texas. Just great opportunities for money, okay? Americans outnumber those living in, the Mexican people living in Texas. They outnumber them by a huge amount. And clearly there's gonna be some tension that's gonna start to rise up between the Americans pouring in and the Mexicans that have been living there. It's gonna cause some issues, all right? Some Americans were obviously bringing slaves with them. We know slavery. We're in the 1800s. Slavery is alive and well in the South, and we will get into this in great detail in the coming weeks. And they are bringing their slaves with them because they are considered property, right? We're not saying it's right. We obviously know that's wrong, but back in the day, that was a part of their culture, right? It was a part of the Southern culture to bring their slaves with them. And they were moving into these areas, buying up this cheap land and producing cotton, okay? Then we get to this idea of a revolution that's going to take place in Texas, okay? Mexico outlaws slavery, okay? So the country of Mexico says this, and all of the people living in Texas were told to give up their slaves. Well, we know that's not going to happen, right? It's not going to take place. And what happens is they refuse to pay taxes as well. One of your questions in the module talked about how in order to move into this area, you had to follow the rules, get along, and I believe accept the Roman Catholic faith, right? Well, clearly they're not willing to do that anymore. So maybe they're looking for a fight. You know, maybe Texas is looking, the people living in Texas, the Texans there are looking for a way to be free. And Mexico requires that Catholicism, and people are saying no, right? People are basically refusing to go along with it. On the exact opposite end of that, Texas wants, to rule themselves. They're not a part of the United States at this time. They're living within a Mexican territory, but they believe that they should form their own area. Santa Anna is down there in Mexico. We'll talk about him in great detail as well. And he's the dictator. And his ideas for for Texas, are pretty harsh. Okay, so we get to this actual revolution. Santa Anna basically comes in and says, I'm not going to listen to this. You're going to pay your taxes. You're going to follow the Catholic faith. You're going to get rid of your slaves. And you're going to do what I tell you to do, all right? So we know where that goes sometimes with people when they're told what they're going to do. And the Texas people are no different back in the 1830s. And they are basically going to say no. So they are baiting, or they are tempting Santa Anna to send his troops into Texas because they believe that he doesn't care, and they believe that it won't be that big of a deal. So they choose Sam Houston as their leader, and they begin to form a small Texan government. Remember, this is not a part of the United States at this time, okay? Several other states are declaring their independence, and Santa Anna is irate. This is a dictator who is extremely upset with what's going on, and he is not willing to really let this happen, okay? So he's going to march his army to crush this Texas rebellion. He's not going to focus over here. He's going to go straight into Texas. So this map kind of breaks down where he goes. You might see some words here that make sense to you. Right here we have the Alamo, which was a question on your module. We have the Goliad Presidio, which was basically an execution of about 300 Texan soldiers who had given up. And Santa Anna said he wasn't taking prisoners, and he marches them in there to crush them. So here's the Alamo, okay, which you can actually visit in San Antonio, Texas. It was a mission, and then it was converted into a fort, and the soldiers were going to try to hold off Santa Anna while the rest of the Texan army got organized, okay? Here's just another map of Texas for you to look at, and the Alamo is this former mission, like I said. I don't know if you can really tell. You can zoom in with the video sometimes when you're watching, but you can see how it's kind of broken down. So the mission's over here, and then there's a fort right there, all right? There's 187 men who chose to stay. They were given the opportunity to leave, but they believed in their fight, and they chose to continue and be a part of the Texan army, stay at the Alamo. Know they were outnumbered about 10-1 when it comes to soldiers, but they weren't going anywhere. Perhaps you've heard of Davy Crockett. He is going to die at the Alamo, and then you've also got a man by the name of Jim Bowie. The Bowie knife, if you've ever seen it, a long knife with a very long, deadly weapon, and he will also die at the Alamo. All right, and there it is, the Bowie knife. The whole purpose of all of this was to buy some time, right? we're on the back. We're on to page 4. We're going to try to get through this really quick. The purpose of the Alamo was to slow down Santa Anna, to get troops organized, to rally, and then defeat Santa Anna's army and push him back into Mexico. Okay. The fort is going to be assaulted for a period of, I believe, 13 days. It took 13 days, and Santa Anna and his men eventually overran the Alamo. The troops from Sam Houston and other parts of Texas never arrived. So this was a defeat for the Texan army, the small Texan army, and Santa Anna thinks he has all this momentum, right? All the Texans were killed, 600 casualties, but it does inspire more people to join the fight at the expense of those 187 men who had died, okay? 2 weeks later, we get to Goliad, which was another, like I said, a part of your question. These men surrendered, believing that they would be taken prisoner and held as prisoners until the end of the war, which is commonly what takes place between two countries that are fighting, and Santa Anna had all of them executed. So between the Alamo and Goliad Presidio, you have a lot of angry Texans, okay, who are ready to fight Santa Anna. We get to the final battle, which is the Battle of San Jacinto, and Sam Houston is going to surprise the Mexican army, and they will basically destroy them. Santa Anna is going to split his army, which is a huge mistake in military tactics. He doesn't believe the Texan army can handle them, and Sam Houston and his men surprise them. They overrun them, and I want to say that the battle lasted about 20 minutes. I mean, that's how short it was, because they were overrun quickly and all of his men surrendered. Santa Anna was captured, and he had to agree to Texan independence, okay? So all of the momentum that was going for Santa Anna really, he hit the wall at San Jacinto, and from there, Texas is going to look to build their independence, maybe become a part of the United States, maybe not. We'll get into that later, okay? Clearly, he's freed. We let him go back. We actually thought that the United States releasing him, people would, Mexicans would take it into their own hands and they would deal with Santa Anna, and he actually went back into power. So when he got back into power, he said, that's not a treaty. I don't believe in it, okay? Then Mexican Congress, what do you know? They don't agree either, and now we have another standoff that may take place, okay? Sam Houston comes in. Remember, we talked about him. He's leading Texas at this time, and he wants the president to annex Texas. What annex means is to become a part of. So he wants Texas to join the United States of America, okay? The problem is Jackson is worried that this issue of slavery will come into play, because it always does back then, all right? Slavery is a huge issue that divides the country, and people are worried if Texas comes into the Union, will they be a slave state or a free state? Never mind the people living there, never mind the slaves whose lives have been, taken away to begin with. It's more about what type of state will it enter as the Union, which will affect laws that are made in Washington, okay? It's a big deal. That's why we're gonna have to get into this, and we're gonna dive into the Civil War, and we're gonna talk about all of these things that are taking place, okay? Texas decides to become an independent nation because no one will agree or disagree or come to an agreement as to how they enter the Union, and they're known as the Lone Star Republic, which they still are today, okay? So what you got here is a situation that is a big deal. You've got a state that wants to enter the Union, but rather than allow them to enter and to bring in all of the people, the money, the economy, the whatnot, slavery is going to still divide this country, right? And we're going to get into all of this with politics and nationalism when we start talking about some more notes on Monday. So we'll get going again on notes on Monday. This will end the second part of the lecture. We are through about 4 pages of notes. I want you to keep bearing with me as I try to do these notes. If you ever have questions about some stuff, please, like I said, message me. Keep doing your assignments to the best you can. We're going to get through this, like I said. We're going to keep pushing. And we're through 4 pages of notes. We got about 5 left, so we'll probably test over this material towards the end of next week. So I want you to be ready, okay? and we'll talk about that in greater detail as we get closer. Okay? Talk to you later. See you guys. Bye.